Welcome to TradeTheNBI.com. This is John. This reports for the 13th. The government shutdown has ended. The euphoria is over. And yeah, there was some selling into the news of it, but nothing dramatic. And you can still see that shorts are continuing to add into the situation with the NBI white rise here, but with Magenta still in the strong lead. So far, okay. Critical test right here. We're meeting with DOC, cyan to green, and that becomes a significant test of whether or not it moves forward or we stall out right here and make a slightly lower high. So that becomes an interesting one. Shakeout still hasn't returned to positive yet, so until that does, um, yeah, you're in a positive bull run with speculative short taking place within it. The question is, can they overwhelm the shorts enough to force them to cover? In which case, then you'd break out to new highs. If you don't, um, yeah, well, we know exactly what will happen then because you'll be moving back down to retest this 50% level. Far less activity from a short standpoint, though, when you look at the NASDAQ. So we're seeing very two different constructs of the markets. NASDAQ being far weaker relative to where the S&P readings are, but also that same meeting point exactly. Well, green is what 528 to cyan 504. So I mean, they literally. We should get the answer later today, and we'll see it obviously intraday before anywhere else. But it'll be fairly decisive at that because a rejection at that particular point, and yeah, it's going to go south quickly. Straightforward. The Fed thinks that they're starting to get back in the game, but it's interesting because you're still ending up with more Fed governors in political trouble, resigning, and it's going to be a question because ideally Trump wants a weaker, Fed, or at least more accommodating to lower rates in that. But that, to a market standpoint, is going to blow up devaluation, which is a big, huge bonus for gold and also for other currencies because, again, you're just devaluing at that particular point. But it would help from a deficit standpoint, but they're just going to spend more, so it's not going to make any difference. From an oil standpoint, though, you had a nice decline there, and that gets you back in position for potentially something significant, which is a break of that 55 level and really driving oil prices down because that's going to be the impetus that drives things. And you can see the euro reaction already jumping on the idea that the U.S. is going to keep spending at ridiculous levels and somehow bail out the European situation, which is deteriorating much faster than anything that the U.S. has. So it's always an interesting one, but they got to go with wherever they can. And the idea that the dollar is going to suffer under higher inflations and the whole Supreme Court, overruling tariffs and them having to pay that, legitimate arguments, but will they transpire that way? We'll see. But look at it, gold, no shock there. Because once the government opened, that meant the floodgates of spending have returned. And of course, they paid everyone for everything that happened before. The people who were laid off are getting hired back. It's just a big jump in cost for no return because none of these people, well, some of them did, the emergency workers and that, but there was a large chunk that didn't do anything and they're going to get paid for all that time off. Bitcoin, and I'm still beginning to, have that same troubling situation and keep reverting right back to this previous algo level right here at the 100 range. And, a lot of the shimmer and shine is off, and it's really just pretty much trading like a more mature high beta asset. I don't think I would describe it any differently. From an ETH standpoint, a little bit stronger than Bitcoin, relatively speaking, given where we're seeing in the readings. When we look at the 50K standpoint, so we had the buy, and then it reversed pretty quickly on the NBI white lead, but then Magenta came back over, which gave a little bit of a burst, but still NBI white lead. It just, you haven't seen a dip of Magenta. Once it dips below the 25 range there, then you should see a move back towards that 50%. So that's what 68.46 range. And then depending on the return spike back up is where you would see a move towards the 0%. And that would fill in the positive extremes going back from the beginning of the breakout. So mean reversion always comes back to the same. In intraday, it was just straight lower, all the expectations, and then of course by later in the day, You flipped them around, took the puts out, and went back into the call buying. From the Asian session, there was a little bit of weakness, but it turned around pretty fast. And now in the European session, it's getting kind of ugly because the weather's colder here. Like a little depression from the fact that we had nice weather, and now it's gotten a little cold. Minor stuff, but all in all, starting to narrow the range is exactly what I expected for November, that we wouldn't have the extreme and the volatility, barring any political situations, which, obviously we've seen can make a big difference. So we'll keep an eye on it. As always, anything relevant, I'll put it on the team chat. Have a good one. Trade well.